everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is our February 2021 paycheck budget review. For those of you new to my channel, we are paid monthly on or around the 15th of each month, and so we need to use that paycheck to cover expenses for the whole month, from the 15th of one month to the 14th of the next. We are a family of 5, very rural living, and we are still paying down some of our debts. So I often see people talking about how budgeting just doesn't work for them. And as a result, they tend to just not budget and rely on their considerable skills. Now, maybe they do have considerable budget skills. I do know that I'm not perfect. I am indeed a human and I am subject to errors. But there are also many people who are better at budgeting than me. I get it. But one thing that I see happening a lot of the time is that people think that they can just set the budget, hope they stick to it, and when they realize they didn't stick to it, it becomes a, see, I knew I couldn't do it, which is simply not true. You are very capable of budgeting, you just need to remember a few things. 1, a budget is merely a best guess. That's it. It's really just an estimation of what you think your expenses will be throughout an income period. And 2, because your budget is a best guess, you really need to review your budget and often. Now, what do I mean by completing a budget review? Well, a budget review does a few things. 1, we're able to determine our actual expenses. It's all fine and dandy if you're estimating like $100 on pet food and supplies, but sometimes life gets in the way and they need medical care or they need special foods for allergies and other health issues. And next thing you know, your actual expenses for your furry friend are just way off. 2, once you determine your actual expenses, you need to compare them to your budgeted amount. This helps you to be able to see trends. Let's say that your family seems to be flying through food every week and those 2 teenage boys you have are also shooting up like weeds. Chances are, my estimated food budget and my actual food expenses are going to be wildly off in this case. If you are way off from multiple budget cycles, you need to consider reevaluating what you're budgeting in that category in the first place. This will entirely depend on what your pay cycle is. For us, since we are paid monthly and budget monthly, I would reevaluate for it maybe by the 3rd month in a row if my estimates are consistently off from what we have spent. If you're paid weekly, maybe reevaluate your grocery expenses every month. 3, you need to go back and recalculate your budget with your actual expenses. This will help you see if your spending habits are helping you or harming you. Do you think that you're a budgeting failure, but you've really been under budget for the last few months and have built up a savings buffer? Or are you overspending by a lot each month and you're needing to pull from sinking funds to cover your overage? There is no shame in either situation. It is a learning experience as you go. And finally, reevaluate your spending with your budget. I already mentioned that I do this every 3 months or so because that's when our trends tend to happen. If we've gone over in one category for one particular month, I'd think more about why that was and whether those issues were in my control or not. I'll leave a link to a blog post I did on how to complete a budget review below if you'd like to read more about it. So going into this budget review, I was already very nervous. I knew that there were categories we had wildly overspent on, and I've posted this on Instagram and Facebook and mentioned it previously in our budget checkup. Our miscellaneous category was a big one. The title is miscellaneous. It's our catch-all category. It's for things that don't fit in nicely to food, household, pet, school, so on and so forth. Eating out is one of those miscellaneous categories. And I've talked about why this was happening in the previous video. I'll link it in the cards above, but basically weather, which is very much out of my control, combined with days that we had multiple appointments, was a large factor in why we were eating out more throughout this pay month. But we also had some school expenses come up and some car expenses come up that was also not really in my radar when we set up our monthly budget. So I start my own budget review by adding up our actual expenses in each category, which were already done off camera. And this was simply because I was double checking each transaction with our Google Sheet and our bank statements. I had some duplicates on this expense tracker. It has been a month or just a year. My brain is just out of it. And I just wanted to make sure that the expenses I had here were indeed the most accurate representation of our expenses throughout this pay month. So I start by going to our paycheck budget sheet and tallying up our income, which includes Hubs' monthly salary, some income from sinking funds for our propane bill, which is in our non-monthly expenses, medical expenses, dental expenses. We had a dental insurance reimbursement from our semi-annual exams, and we had some gardening expenses and gifting expenses, which I will add in later. So our total income for the month was $7,290.67. Only $5,840 of that was actually salary, actual income. The rest was sinking funds and insurance reimbursements. Next was our sinking fund categories. These are set month to month and do not vary. And I do not take from these to cover expenses in other areas. These are like the non-negotiables of our budget. And for this paycheck, it was $934. Bills. This was another area I was just a little concerned with. We had made the final payment of $584 on my Citi card, leaving us with just K-Chase as our last credit card that holds a balance. And I really wanted this to have like a minimum of $300 put on it this month. The problem is that this is due 4 days after we get our paycheck, which leaves us another 27 days until the next check. AKA, that's 27 days that other expenses can come up. But this category, we only spent $2,739.82. Most of them were under. There were a few that were over, like D-Chase, that's our entertainment expenses, and our Verizon, our home phone and internet bill, was also more this month. Our variable expenses, this includes cash and debit on this worksheet. We currently don't use cash envelopes. We have in the past, it has worked in the past, but right now and for about the last year, debit is what has been working for us. So food, we budgeted $750 and we spent $924, and I will talk about why this amount is so high in a little bit. Household was another area we overspent. We budgeted $160 and spent just over $265. This was just things lining up around the house that were running out, and they all just lined up at once. Pet, we budgeted $160 and we spent just under $78. Miscellaneous, now I already talked about why this one was so high, but we ended up spending $286 when we budgeted $150. Clothing was under budget. We spent $45 and budgeted $100. Fuel was also under. We budgeted $200 and spent $153. This is just fuel for my vehicle. This does not include fuel for Hubs' company truck. The company pays for that fuel. Therapy, I had initially budgeted for 6 sessions, but we ended up having 7 sessions, and I talk a little bit about that in my March paycheck budget because I needed to sign up for more therapy sessions. So for February, we budgeted $90 and I'm expecting $105 to be spent. This is money that stays in our checking account until we receive the bill. Due to the current health issues that are going on globally, they aren't taking co-pays at the time of service. Dance I thought was going to be $70 for the month. It wound up being $75. School and car, I actually hadn't budgeted anything. I wasn't really expecting much of anything. We spent $93 and $29 respectively. The other categories you see there, dental, medical, propane, those are all from sinking funds. So our cash envelopes categories were $1,693.38, and then debit expenses were $1,849.39. Again, most of this comes from sinking funds. There was some other miscellaneous and gifting expenses that I do add in at the bottom here, but basically when all is said and done, we came under budget by $25. And yes, for me, this was a big sigh of relief. And actually, that's not as close as I thought it would have been. I thought we would have been like $3 or $4 under. This is remaining in our checking account for Hubs' filling. It's going to add in with the other $75 from our January paycheck budget. So on my budget review pages, which are part of my budgeting workbook, if you downloaded that from my Etsy shop, but there's also a separate paycheck budget review bundle as well. I go through each category with what was budgeted and what we spent. Now food, I said that it was insanely high, and it is. We normally don't spend $924 within a month. But we did a shopping trip on March 13th for the week of March 15th. Now normally I would have waited until payday, March 15th, to go shopping because we had food on hand. But the week of March 15th came after 2 very busy, very emotionally and mentally draining weeks, and there was yet another busy week coming up ahead of that. I would not have had time to go and get groceries for that week ahead. There have been times that I do the shopping early and just place it under the next paycheck's budget. We have a buffer in the checking account for multiple reasons, and this is one of them. But knowing how close our March budget was ahead of time, I didn't want to do that either. So our food budget is way out of whack here simply because we made the decision to do some preemptive shopping. Beyond that, I do notate that eating out was a struggle this month, and that is something that I need to get a pack filled with snacks into the car. This is going to be especially crucial as we have a referral for my son for a specific practice, and there are none within a 90-minute one-way drive from where we live. So being prepared for this is much better than convenience. For expenses, I need to keep in mind over the next couple months that we need to get our back to school fund started. I couldn't do it with our March paycheck budget, but I will start it in our April paycheck. We need to continue researching roof costs, and we need to continue saving for A's orthosurgery, which I did find out is now scheduled for June 15th. This is also when I need to get his trumpet cleaned during that time period as well. It works out because he's not allowed to play his trumpet for a decent time period after his surgery, like at least 6 to 8 weeks, because his sinus cavity is so precariously close to where his wisdom teeth are that if he just goes for it and plays his trumpet, he's gonna have a hole connecting his mouth with his nasal cavity, not the type of hole that you want, and it's going to require yet another surgery. If that's something that I can just kind of get the trumpet out of the house while he recovers, the odds of him getting distracted by the trumpet and wanting to play it during 6 to 8 weeks will just greatly reduce that. So that's it for this budget review. Remember, even when you are all over the place with your budget, it doesn't mean that you are a failure at budgeting. I've got categories that are greatly over and categories that are under. You are simply making a best guess with the information you have available at the time. Continue to review your budget and update your information as you can, and then make better estimates as you go along. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, click that like button, and if you want to see more videos, please click that subscribe button. And until next time, bye.